When it comes to the election, I mean, what is your degree of confidence in the election process this year? We have more mail-in ballots than ever before in history when it comes to any election, especially presidential. So do you feel confident in the process?
I'm most confident with Oklahoma's election system because that's the one I'm most familiar with. We have a very secure election system. I have voted absentee before by mail because I travel obviously quite a bit and I'm not always there, especially on primary days and such. We're often in Washington, D.C. on those days. And so I do vote by mail, and that's been a very good system. It's been very reliable. I encourage people to do that. Now, the deadline's coming very soon for that. If you're going to request an absentee ballot, you have to have that request in by the 27th of October, and it has to actually be returned before the end of Election Day. So if people are going to vote by mail, you need to hurry on that because it's got to be returned and in hand by the end of the day on Election Day. There's also in-person voting on the weekend before the election that you can do in every single county, and then obviously at your precinct on Election Day itself. We've made a lot of changes since 2016 in working on additional security protocols and additional assistance, and also watching out for interference. We saw that even this week with the FBI and the Director of National Intelligence saying we picked up interference from a group of Iranians that are trying to interfere in our election, putting these fake emails out saying they're the Proud Boys and trying to intimidate voters. Immediately, FBI stepped out, exposed that for what it was, and then put sanctions within 48 hours on this group of Iranians as well, and they've taken aggressive action to be able to push back. That's exactly the way it should have been handled in 2016. That's the way it is being handled now, that whether they're trying to attack our voting system or trying to interfere in our election, Americans have our own arguments and discussions. We should not have foreigners try to engage with us to influence us in this.
Gotcha. So it sounds like, in terms of limiting foreign interference, you feel the federal government's doing everything that it needs to in order for this to be a true election, both, with in-person voting, mail-in voting, however you're getting your ballot in, it's going to be a fair process.
It is. It looks to be a very good process. The challenge has been out there. The president's talked a lot about mail-in ballots, and this is not new on mail-in ballots. People make more mistakes when they actually do a mail-in ballot. And we've just seen that over time. Up to 20% in previous elections of mail-in ballots have had to be kicked out because the voter themselves actually made a mistake with it. They didn't sign it. In some states it requires a signature. They didn't actually put a signature, or they didn't put it in the correct envelope, or they didn't get it in time back to the election authorities. There's lots of ways that people can make mistakes with that. In Oklahoma law, you either have to have it notarized or show some form of ID. This year, because of the pandemic, you can just make a copy of your voter card or a copy of your ID and include that. If you don't include that, that's not a valid vote. And so people make mistakes with mail-in voting, and that's the bigger problem. If you want to make sure it's there, do in-person voting, then you'll know.
And if you missed part one of Jesse's interview with Senator Lankford, you can check that out on KOMNewsNow.com. Be back with more KOM Morning News for you right after this.